What's going on, guys and girls? This is Josh with Lead Farmers Tactical again. Today we're going to be doing the 3 AR mods for under $10 each. Alright guys, so AR15, you guys know this platform. If you don't, maybe we'll do a video in the future about it, but this is for the guys that already have an AR15 and want to do some stuff to it, but maybe don't have a whole lot of money right now, or want to do functional stuff just as they're going. But these particular mods aren't going to cost you very much, like I said, less than $10 a piece. And so we're going to go ahead and start, and we're going to start with the drop-in part. So for the drop-in part, I've already got it in here, weapons unsafe, and I have already checked it. I just checked it again for you guys. So this particular part goes in the lower receiver, and I'm actually going to break it completely in half here. And we're just going to set the upper receiver down. So everybody knows what your lower receiver looks like. Here you go, AR15 lower receiver. I've got a few Go Faster parts on there, but nothing super serious. So the part that we're looking at for under $10 is actually this right here. Okay, so this goes by, they got a lot of different names for them. There's like the ARwedge, the ARwedge. They've got all kind of names, but essentially what you have here, this is a little rubber, it's like high density rubber bumper with a little semicircle like tall wedge on the back of it. You can get these for like $3 or $4 a piece. I've seen deals of them where you can get like 5 for like $12 or something. So they're cheap, and they don't really, there's no drawback to putting one of these in your rifle. So basically what it does is you turn it just like this. It sits in the back of your lower receiver and presses down. It presses in against the back of the lower receiver inside your trigger well area, and it basically sits right underneath this pin. Okay, so it sits right here underneath the takedown pin. And what this is meant to do is, let me actually roll this over here. So on your upper receiver, you obviously have your pivot pin peg here, and then your takedown pin peg in the back. Now when you put the two halves together, you put your lower receiver and your upper receiver together, this rear peg goes down into your lower receiver here, front peg goes in between the two pin guides up front, and hold the two halves together. I mean, that's basically what it's meant to do. Now, on every single lower receiver and upper receiver mated together, you're going to have some amount of play. Obviously, the more expensive you go, the more high-end you go with your parts, the less play you'll get, and if you go really low-end, you may end up with a lot of play. Or if they're way out of spec, you'll end up with a lot of play. So putting this in here, all it does is it puts pressure here on the bottom of your rear takedown pin and presses it up. So any of that loose slack up and down from your pin maybe not fitting all the way in here, or any side to side slack from these having space to move down into the lower receiver, you're going to take that up and you're going to put pressure on it. So basically, instead of your weapon system being able to rattle side to side or up and down, you press this up against the pin, and by pressing it up and flushing up against the pin, it also takes out most of your side to side wobble here. Now this is a Delton lower receiver and a Delton upper receiver, along with DPMS lower receiver parts kit. So this is not a super high end. This isn't Noveski or one of those really expensive brands, Seekins or something like that. This is pretty basic parts. And what I'm going to do, actually, is, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and take the wedge out. So we're going to pull the wedge out. We're just going to set it right here to the side. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to just kind of bolt everything together. And I'm going to show you guys. I mean, there's a fair amount of play there. It's not a whole lot. Delton's actually really good company for like entry level or mid level parts. I love them. If you're just wanting to build a mil spec AR-15 or like a combat AR-15, something that's a defensive weapon, that's a tool, much less of a competitive gun, Delton's fantastic. So you can see the little gap right there, maybe. There's a little gap right there. It kind of moves back and forth, and you can rock it up and down a little bit. So when you go to shoulder your weapon, I'm not really left-handed, but when you go to shoulder your weapon, between where your rear grip is and your shoulder weld and your front grip, you're going to end up with this play here, which could throw off your shot depending on how far out of spec these are. If you're running a gun and trying to do fast work and you don't have time to make sure that everything's torqued in just right, or as you're rapidly firing, you can have that little bit of play throwing off your shot anywhere from, minuscule amounts of like an eighth of an MOA up to half an MOA, a full MOA maybe. I mean, little bits of playback here can amount to a lot of play up at the muzzle and in the sights. So by putting this ARwedge in here, which I'll go ahead and break this over. Like I said, it's real simple. You drop it in, stick it back here, close it up, pop the pin back in, and now all that play is now taken out, which to actually make it move, you have to put pressure. It's not going to just randomly flop around. It doesn't just randomly move. We took out all that play, and you don't have to worry about it if you have the exact right torque on it, if you're torquing the right direction for the zero and stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't move at all. I mean, the whole gun moves with it. So that's part number one. That's your drop-in part. And that is the first of our really inexpensive AR-15 mods. Like I said, nobody's ever been able to come up with a negative for that. Even in a competition gun, even if it is a Noveski with next to no play, putting in that in there is not going to hurt your performance at all. It adds next to no weight. I mean, you're talking grams, like paperclip grams. Next to no weight, it's not touching anything functional, so it can't impede the functionality of the weapon system. There's just no drawback. So to have a bunch of them on hand, I think everyone that I know that has an AR, after seeing this and after having seen them, or maybe they already had them, they're now running them. So, and they run them in all their systems. So that would be the first thing that I would recommend. Like I said, it's cheap, $4 to $5, and a great mod for any AR. Number two, this is the no experience required modification that you can do. And this one is not so much for the handling of the weapon or accuracy or anything like this. This one is actually more for shooter comfort and maintaining the reliability of the operator of the weapon. So we're going to pull out the bolt here and set that off to the side. This one's actually on the charging handle, and you guys may have seen this before, but basically this is a do-it-yourself gasbuster charging handle. You probably can't see it very well in the video, but what I've done is we've taken a little bit of RTV and we've made an RTV, or like rubberized seal. RTV is a gasket sealant making material for automotive purposes normally, and we've created a little seal right here against the back of the charging handle. Now this one's kind of chewed up because I've had it on there for a while, and what it does is it creates a seal between the back of the upper receiver and the charging handle here, and keeps it from venting gas back in your face. On a stock AR that's carbine length or longer gas system, this doesn't make a huge difference, but I mean, it keeps any amount of gas from escaping into your face, which is good. You don't get, dry eyes, you don't get oil and carbon and stuff all over your shooting glasses, you don't get it blown up in your face and causing you to blink and stuff. It tends to vent out the ejection port cover and out the muzzle, obviously. So this becomes very, very useful when you're shooting like fully automatics, suppressed fire, or really short pistol length gas systems. But it has its uses. even out to a rifle length gas system, any time that you can increase your comfort, increase your visibility, and your reliability as the shooter and as the operator of the weapon system, I mean, like I said, you can't go wrong. Now, I've already shot a video. Like I said, this one's been on here for a long time, but I want to show you guys how to do it. So I'm going to go ahead, and we'll cut over there, and I'll show you the video. I did it with a friend of mine named Daniel, who is a fairly new shooter. He hasn't been in too long. So I've helped him with working on his AR, working on his pistol, and showing him some tricks around shooting, and also helping him upgrade and modify his gear. So we'll go ahead and cut over there, and you guys can check that out, enjoy, and I'll be back with the third mod here in just a minute. Thanks. Alright, so we're getting ready to do your gasbuster mod, and just so we can get everything lined out, we're going to get the acetone. Got a rag here. I need to get my sketch. And just automotive grade black silicone RTV. And we'll go ahead, break your rifle down. So we're just going to break it down to the upper, just the upper. Okay. I'm going to get the fucking pin out. There we go. And did we hand tighten this, or?
No, we Loctited it.
Yeah, probably did, so I'm not going to take that off.
Yeah, no.
Alright, so we'll go ahead and pull your bolt out. You'll just have to carry it on with you. I'll just put it in there.
Luckily it's clean, so it won't be messy.
Well, we're going to acetone it, so it's going to take off any like grit and grime in the little spot that we're trying to actually clean up for the seal.
Okay.
So it should be fine.
Is this a special type of acetone, or
just automotive grade acetone, just to make sure that any grease or anything that'll keep the RTV from adhering is cleaned off. And the only surface that we really have to clean up is going to be right here on your charging handle.
Okay.
So, because that's where all that gas gets vented, like we were talking about. All the gas and carbon and everything that gets vented back here in your face also sticks right here, so it'll keep it from...
So that's why it's so dirty.
Yeah. Not clean it, but I mean, you know, it's cool.
Well, now that it's working, I never want to clean it.
Alright, so that looks like it's probably about good. Like I said, mostly it's just the oil and stuff from the gun that leaks back there. So we got that cleaned up, and rather than cleaning this, I'm going to take, I got the frog lube here, so it's going to be all minty fresh.
Okay.
And I'll shoot just a little dab of frog lube. I'm going to put it right here on the back of the receiver and wipe it down real good so that your RTV doesn't stick to it. Now when you go to remove, like pull back on the charging handle, you're going to have to let it sit for about 24 hours. When you go to pull it back, do it real slow. Okay. And if it's sticking to the receiver, just take like a little X-Acto blade or razor blade or something, just kind of like cut it loose from the back of the receiver.
Okay.
Because if it sticks to it, there's a good chance you'll pull it loose from both sides, and you'll just have a piece of RTV you'll have to toss, and then you'll have to do the mod again, if you want to do the mod again.
Okay.
So I got a little thin coat on there, and we'll go ahead and kind of clean it up. We're just going to leave it wet. So, I'm actually going to have to pull this off here, because this tip is trashed. So we're going to put a real thin bead of RTV right here in the back, right around the edges. Another thing that you may run into when you're getting this back off, you may actually have, just to be safe, I'll do this. You may actually have a small layer of RTV underneath
the back of the upper receiver kit is going to kind of squish in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be stuck in the flat here. If you don't want it, you can take a razor and just kind of cut it and peel it off. It should peel off pretty easily. But it doesn't really affect anything. Unless it's actually causing a lot of friction, it really doesn't cause any problems. So, get this. We're going to just slide up in here and lock it. And then, I had a credit card right here. Let me go grab the credit card I had for this. Be right back. So you could use a putty knife or something. I'm just going to use a piece of heavy cardstock credit card or business card rather than.
So you should use somebody else's credit card.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
And just kind of lay it down here flat and end up kind of skim coating all this off.
Just get the excess off.
Yeah, just get the excess off. That'll also kind of force the RTV up against the back of the receiver. And it'll show you if you got any gaps. Like we got a small gap over here. So I'm just going to take RTV here. I'm just going to dab a little bit with my finger. I'm just going to press it down in there. So we've got that kind of pressed down in there. Cap this back up. Once we got it kind of basically cleaned off, I'm going to just take this with a little bit of the acetone side and just kind of clean off the excess.
So if I leave it for longer than 24 hours, will that cause any problems, or
Nah.
just a minimum of 24 hours?
Just minimum of 24 hours. It's just cure time.
Okay.
It normally cures in like 12 to 24, so you could actually come in a little over 24 hours and be just fine.
Okay.
But there we go. So you should have two metal surfaces all clean, and then just that little bead in there. And like I said, that oil will keep it from sticking to the inside, which is actually on the directions on the RTV. If you're building a temporary seal, just oil one side so it doesn't stick to it.
Okay.
So you just leave that in there, just leave it pressed in, and I'll just put your rifle back together. Like I said, you can just take your bolt and carrier home in the bag. It might get a little dusty, but you can clean them up before you range.
Cool.
And now you should be all good to go. And then, like I said, in 24 hours or after 24 hours, you'll have a gas buster, so keep it from venting back in your face, especially if you're going to be using like the scope. Like, it doesn't seem like a lot when you're using iron sights, but when you start looking through like a lens, any amount of speckle on your safety glasses just gives you another weird focal point, and your eyes don't want to focus very well. So
I got you. Cool.
Jameson's our sponsor for this episode. Jameson.
Apparently.
Alright guys, so that was the gasbuster charging handle mod. Hope you could see everything that was going on. We're going to go ahead now, we'll get set back up here, and we're going to get ready to do the $10 trigger job for your AR15. So, we'll be back in just a second. So I'm going to show you guys the last one, and like I said, this is the one that does require a certain amount of experience. Now I've already kind of set it up here, just to save some time, but what we're going to be doing is a trigger job that costs less than $10. So first thing we're going to have to do is take out the trigger pin, and so I'm going to go ahead and tap these out. Now I have anti-rotational pins, so they take a little bit more work, but for most of you guys, if you have standard trigger pins, you don't have to worry about it too much. So you just drive out your pins here. Let's see if I can get this out without. So what you're going to need for this, like I said, your brass punches. Try not to use steel. Steel can mar up your finish. Brass tends to be a lot easier here. And it generally helps if you drive out the hammer pin first. But like I said, anti-rotational pins, they're a little bit harder to get in and out, so we're going to go ahead and knock this down. Try this out of here. Now, as you're pushing the pin out, which shouldn't be too terribly hard, you want to work your hammer a little bit. I'm going to rotate it up where I can see, because you're going to have to keep lining up the holes because the hammer will walk around on you. So it helps to step down to a slightly smaller punch so that you can still line everything up. So there we go. So we got the hammer pin out. Make sure you hold on to this. It is under spring tension. And if you've never disassembled this, make sure you make a note of which way it goes. So the legs sit over the rear pin here. So I'll set the hammer on the hammer springer side. And that pin is almost out, so we should be able to just pop it out of there. Like I said, make sure that you keep an eye on this stuff here. Here's your disconnect. And then your trigger assembly. There's a little detent spring in here, so don't lose that. Set all that off to the side. At this point, make sure you didn't lose anything in the lower receiver, and set the lower receiver off to the side. So what we're going to do here is something that's a little bit controversial in certain gun circles. The front of the trigger here is where the trigger actually engages the sear. So when the sear rolls back, the trigger sets basically in this little notch, just like this, and as you squeeze the trigger drops off the notch, hammer goes forward, engages the primer, then when the bolt cycles, it pushes that hammer back down. The disconnect plays a part here, but essentially what happens is as you release the trigger, it re-engages the sear and resets. So the main contact, the only contact you're getting with this big part and your whole trigger is this little bit right here on the front and this little notch right here. Now, that little notch is pretty exact. I mean, these are mil-spec parts. This is a pretty exact little notch, so I'm not really going to mess with that. What we can do is mess with the trigger just a little bit. Now, I would not recommend doing this on any parts that are more than mil-spec, because you are definitely running the risk of screwing this up at some point. So we're going to go ahead and remove the trigger spring, and this is just a mil-spec spring on here. Let's go ahead and get that off. We're going to set it off to the side, and just so that we don't lose it, it's looking pretty good. We'll leave the spring alone. Doesn't look like it's going anywhere. So if you look at the face of your trigger here, it's supposed to be perfectly flat, but there's machine marks. And those machine marks can vary depending on the brand and the manufacturer that everything comes from as to how much machine mark is left. Now this one's a pretty nice trigger, I'm not gonna lie. The DPMS is really nice, so I'm not gonna be doing a whole lot of work. I've actually done this on the trigger that normally rides in there. This one is just a part I've dug out of the box and I threw in for you guys. So it's a standard mil-spec DPMS trigger. There are machine marks here, and that can lead to grittiness in the trigger. So what we're going to be doing is not actually taking any weight off the trigger pull, anything like that. We're just going to be smoothing it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a rag here and we'll clean most of the dirt and grime and anything else. This one's been sitting in the toolbox, so it's more dirty than it normally would be on my gun. get it kind of cleaned up so I can take a look at all these surfaces here. Now this one's, like I said, shows a little bit of machine mark, not too much. So we're not actually wanting to remove a lot of material here. We're not wanting to change angles. We're not doing anything that's going to majorly affect trigger pull. Obviously a little bit will be because you're changing the friction forces. But what we're going to do is we've got 3 grades of sandpaper here. We've got 600 grit automotive sandpaper, 800, and 1000. And realistically, you could take this up as high as you wanted to. If you want to skip, go to 1000, then go to 1200, 1600, 2000. Go up to a polishing. You can get that thing as mirror shiny as you want. Now you're going to see diminishing returns as you go that far, but you will see a slight improvement. So what we're going to do is go up to about 1000 grit, which is about where I've noticed that you see the most improvement. But we're going to start off here with a 600 grit sandpaper. Get the thing out of here. So take a piece of 600 grit sandpaper, and preferably you want to have a really smooth, flat surface to do this on. So we're going to get it laid down. We're going to hold it so we make sure it doesn't move. And now my preference is to get a little bit of lubricating oil or something slightly wet. Just kind of moisten the sandpaper because this is wet dry, and this will cut down you causing more rough spots than you have to. You're going to take the end of this and you're going to lay it perfectly flush. Okay? You don't want to be tilting it and bending it like that because you're going to change the angles here, which is going to change the release point, and doing that is possibly going to destroy this trigger. So this is why I'm saying that this is a moderate amount of experience necessary to do this. So what you're going to do is you're going to set it down here and you're going to make just very tiny 1/4 inch movements back and forth and just kind of sand this down. Always keep an eye on it, keep checking it and looking for the machine marks to see if they're going down. So very small movements. We're not trying to take a lot off, and you're not bearing down on it. You're just trying to keep it perfectly upright. Put just enough pressure to keep it grinding a little bit, and slowly grind the machine marks off. We're not trying to change the depth. Remember that. It's very important. You don't want to do that until you're getting into major gunsmithing and you you really know what you're doing as far as actual gunsmithing. You understand the engineering that goes into the gun. So this is going to take us a little while. Probably going to end up editing a lot of this out. So we're going to go really slow until you start to see all the machine marks and the irregularities start flushing out and cleaning up really good. So we'll keep working on this, and we'll cut over to the next part here in just a minute. Alright guys, so I've taken most of the machine marks out of here. There's a little indent in this one from where the hammer was engaging before I swapped over to my most recent trigger. And this might have been the one I got used from a guy. But for the most part, on the flush surface, most of the machine marks are gone. So we're going to take our 600 grit sandpaper, and we're just going to set it off to the side. And we're going to go ahead and bump it up to the 800 grit sandpaper. And we're kind of going to repeat the process. Right at this point, we're not really looking to remove too much else. We're going to be basically polishing. The 800 grit's going to help us polish it out. Now, if you want to, you can still use just a little bit of lubricating oil or water or something. I prefer oil. I'll set this down on here, and we're going to keep working it. Like I said, be very careful, go slow, and make sure you keep this perfectly perpendicular. Don't rock it like this. You want to go straight back and forth. So we're going to go straight back and forth. Now, some guys will tell you that you know, oh, you're removing the machine hardened part of the trigger, and that you're possibly weakening your trigger here. Yes, no, maybe so. I mean, the little bit that you're taking off is no more than just polishing. That's all you're really doing is you're polishing metal. You're taking what minor irregularities are, you're smoothing everything out. So yes, you're removing some metal and some of it's machine hardened. Honestly, the type of steel and everything you're working with, I don't think makes a big difference. You do your own research, you decide for yourself if you don't want to do this. You know, definitely don't do it. By the way, guys, if you're going to err in any direction, you want to err, and when I say error, like your direction of error, if you're going to modify any edge accidentally, you want it to be this edge. Now, you really don't want to modify any edge. You want to keep this perfectly flush. But if there's an edge that might get kind of bumped around and rounded off a little bit, you want it to be the bottom edge because this does not actually contact here. Only contact is from about 3/4 of the way down, maybe halfway down up. So you don't want to change this angle at all. This one, if it gets kind of bumped around, you're not really going to hurt anything, but still be as careful as you can. So make sure if you're going to be doing things, go from this end forward. Don't try and come in from the front back, so that you can kind of set it down. And we're going to keep working on it here. Alright, so I would say that we've done a lot of good work here. Even that little minor divot has flushed out really well. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to move to the finishing process here. So I'm going to set the 800 grit up here, so I keep it separate from my 600 grit. So once you get that high, pain in the ass to tell which one's which. So we're moving to our 1000 grit sandpaper, and this is truly a polishing sandpaper. You can go much higher when you do clear coats and stuff on cars. For those real super shiny ones, they go all the way up to like 2,000-3,000, I think. And if you want to get super retentive with this, you can get like some jewelry polish, like the compound and buffing wheel, and just buff the end of this so that you have a mirror shine. You don't need it, but hey, if you want to, knock yourself out. So now with this 1000 grit, we're just going to work little zigzag patterns here. Like I said, we're using really light pressure. Alright guys, so as we're finishing up the process, what we're going to do here, just to make sure that any micro lines are in the direction of the trigger travel, so up and down, so side to side. We've gotten this pretty flush and smooth, so what we're going to do, like I said, make sure that if you're going to put more pressure, it's toward the back, not towards the front, or at least towards the trigger shoe, not towards the engagement end. So we're going to set this down right here, and we're going to take really short strokes back and forth. In the same direction as the trigger travel, because if you have micro ridges, or any type of ridge really like this where you have low points and high points, that's where you're going to get kind of that jerky, grabby, gritty feel. Whereas if they're up and down, even if they're up and down, as long as they're uniform, you're going to get a uniform trigger pull. Alright, so we finished this up, and I'm not going to go any further with it. There's a low spot kind of low on the trigger, but I don't want to take off more material than I have to, which is a very important thing at this point. So we're going to clean it with a soft cloth, and just kind of wipe it clean, make sure we get all the dust and grit and oil and everything off of there from where we were working on this. Make sure we haven't dinged anything up. Check it over really good. And now I can show you guys You can see that's a lot brighter. It's been polished a lot across the face. There's a little bit of wear right down here, but again, I don't think that's going to be high enough to hit the trigger, the hammer rather. So we've got it in a good spot. The trigger pull now is going to feel really nice and smooth. You can come in here and clean this up if you feel confident, but like I said, the only thing that we're really showcasing today is just clean up the very face of the trigger, which is a nice little trigger job. Takes you about 15 or 20 minutes if you go slow, maybe 30. Alright guys, so we finished up our trigger job and just wanted to finish up with, don't forget to function check, always test it out, and your first time out the range you're probably going to load 1 round at a time, 2 rounds at a time, just to make sure that you're not getting a runaway gun condition or anything like that, and you're not having misfires or unintentional fires. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to keep it on safe. We've got everything reassembled. We're going to check, make sure that nothing's coming loose, it's not firing unintentionally. Kind of bang on it, make sure it's not going to just jump loose on you. Go ahead and flip it over to fire. Make sure that you put your thumb over the hammer, letting it in contact the inside of the lower receiver can cause damage. If you just let go full force, you can get little pads in there or something like that. That should be fine, but I just use my thumb. So we're going to put the thumb on here. We're going to give the trigger a squeeze. And let go of the sear. So as we're holding the trigger down, we're going to go ahead, push the hammer back, make sure it re-engages on your disconnect. We're going to let off the trigger and make sure that the hammer doesn't go forward. Going to go ahead and put our thumb back, squeeze again, make sure that as we ride it forward that it didn't just jump off on its own. So again, you can hold the trigger back, re-engage, let off, make sure that this isn't, no matter what you do to this hammer, it's not just coming loose. Okay? You can also go ahead and make sure that you fire it, let off the trigger, ride that back and make sure it's engaging. Make sure with the trigger to the, in the forward position, that this is not coming loose, because at this point it's only engaging the sear, it's not engaging the disconnect. Nothing's happening here, side to side, up and down, no slack, no play, everything's working good, and it's a very nice, smooth. I'm sure that you guys won't be able to see this on the camera, but very smooth, very sharp break. It's a mil-spec trigger, so there's going to be some creep, but I mean, it breaks over very clean. No grit, none of that telltale, scratching in the trigger. It works very well. Everything's working great, so this one's ready to be fielded and take it out to the range. Like I said, shoot 1, 2, 3 rounds. Just do your test rounds first. Make sure that you're not going to get a runaway gun condition, and you should be good to go. The packs of sandpaper that we used, they were like $3 or $4 a piece. So about $9 to $12. However, you can buy a variety pack that has all those grits in it, and you're going to get like 1 sheet or 2 sheets each, and they're going to be about $7 or $8. So that was our 3 mods for under $10 each. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Really appreciate you watching. Like I said, if you like the video, please like, subscribe to the channel. Go check us out on Facebook. Give us a like there. Keep up. We'll be posting all of our news on the Facebook. And we may eventually be moving into Twitter, all that other kind of stuff. But right now there's a very limited crew, so we're kind of short on staff. But I really appreciate you guys sticking around. So get out there, do the mods. Hope you enjoy them. And remember, knowing is half the battle. The other half is fun.